I put my hand over my boss's mouth and mouthed, "Don't talk." The brass knob was already turning. And on the other side of that door, the man who wore a gentleman's smile was picking the perfect night to make death look tidy. That's how it started, thunder rolling over Savannah, like a train lemon oil and old money. In the Whitfield office, me shaking just enough to feel it, and still steady enough to mean it. Eleanor's eyes said I'd lost my mind, but then we both heard him. "Tonight's right," Charles whispered, lazy and careful like sin in a Sunday suit. "She's worn down, no one will question anything," and I felt the house hold its breath. I let go and she came at me the way power does when it's scared, chin up, voice clipped, telling me to never touch her again, telling me I was bleeding on the rug, telling me I didn't know a thing about her marriage, and I could have swallowed it like I've swallowed worse, you know what I mean, but... Copper barked from the back stairs, one clean note that said something in this house was wrong, and the knob settled back in its latch like a trap resetting. I told her what I heard, told her storms are cover, because nobody drops by in a hurricane, told her if she spoke his name out loud, he'd walk in and finish the thought. He started in the hallway, and she called me jealous, called me filthy, said I was spinning a tabloid out of chamomile tea and a good night's sleep, and yeah, that happened. It stung, but I'd been poor long enough to know pride likes to talk loud before it learns to listen. I dimmed my phone and opened the recorder, that red dot, pulsing like a little heartbeat. I could hold in my hand, and I said, "We don't open, we don't answer. We let him talk to the door, and we capture it. Sound carries in old houses. Truth does too, if you help it." And she said, if I was lying, I'd be gone by morning. And I said if I was lying, I'd leave before she could ask. He came with a knock that was barely a tap, and a voice sweet enough to rot your teeth. "Ellie, you awake? I brought your drops, lemon balm, lavender, that little extra you like." And the handle jiggled like he'd never noticed the lock in 20 years of marriage. And I held the phone to the seam, the waveform jumping like it knew what was at stake. She trembled and nearly answered. I shook my head and mouthed, "Don't." And he sighed like we were the unreasonable ones, said we'd talk tomorrow, and drifted away down the hall with leather soles that sounded patient and hungry. Waiting is the real hard part. The storm pressed on the roof, the chandelier chimed thinly. Copper paced and whined and went quiet. And in that quiet came a new sound, metal on metal, slow as a man learning a lock he paid for but never touched. Then a coin on the vent, a hum in the return, the kind of testing you do when you want to measure how far a whisper goes. And I kept rolling, recording, letting him rehearse the cover story. He wanted the city to repeat for him. She works too hard. She pushes herself. Exhaustion takes people no one would question. I called 911 with my mouth barely open, gave my name, the address, the sentence I never thought I'd say, in a house with a gallery wall and a grand piano. Husband intends harm. We're locked in the upstairs office, and the operator told me to keep the line open if I could, and keep breathing no matter what. People think sirens bring relief like a switch. But if you've ever waited, you know the body still does math. How long from the nearest precinct? How long up the stairs? How long a bolt holds against a shoulder? He tried the door again, not whispering this time. Voice warmer than bourbon, you know. "I worry people are talking. This can all be quiet. If you just rest," and Eleanor's eyes filled with water. She'd never let anyone see. She mouthed, "Why now?" And I mouthed, "Storms, hide sins." And the lights dipped, and Copper yelped a sharp, ugly sound, and she surged to the door, because love is fast and reckless. But I caught her sleeve and said, "That's what he wants. He wants you frantic and loud," and she hated me for a second, and then hated herself for it a second later. Blue and red bloomed through rain at the front gates, and just like that he changed costumes. Evening officers he called down smooth and relaxed, like the foyer was a stage he'd owned his whole life. And they said they had a call, and he said the staff gets nervous in weather, and his wife needs rest, and everything's fine. And you could feel the room tilt because charm has a way of fogging even trained eyes. The operator said, "If you can signal, do it now," so I killed the lamp and pulsed my phone light through the curtains quick and low, praying that blue outside could see white inside. And when the beagle yelped again, the air downstairs changed. The officer's voice got sharp. "We need to see your wife," and Charles let the velvet slip. "You'll do it with a warrant." And that's when I put my mouth to the door and used the only loud I had left. Up here, end of the hall, he's at the office, and radios cracked like summer lightning, and the stairs became boots and breath and intention. He hit the door shoulder first, and the bolt screamed wood, splintered where old men had once insisted on craft. Eleanor slid under the desk with the phone like we'd drilled 1,000 times, and I threw my whole body against that panel like bones could be steel if the stakes were high enough. Officers shouted commands. He shouted hysterical and manipulated, and Maid like the word itself was a stain, I shouted. Then why the lock? Why the shoulder and the battering ram answered for me 2 sharp hits, and the frame gave up, and rain and flashlights spilled across the office like judgment. He froze for the first time all night, the mask asking the man what to do, and he tried one last smile that didn't make it to his eyes. "My wife is unwell," he said. And Eleanor stood, hair stuck to her face, voice small and fierce. "I am unwell, just not how you want me." And she held up that phone like it was both shield and sword. And when the officer pressed play, the room heard what we'd heard. "No one will question tonight. Rest, make it look natural." Lies sound different when a tiny speaker makes them honest. He reached a hand like a hook, and the officer blocked another, turned him cuffs, clicked a sound that's smaller than you think, and heavier than it has any right to be. After the house was so quiet, I could hear my own hand stinging, peroxide fizzed, and Eleanor flinched harder than I did. She apologized in a voice that didn't know the root yet, said she called me names and I saved her anyway. And I wanted to make a joke because that's my bad habit, but I let it sit. I said, "You're alive, that's the part that matters." And the truth is, it did. The next day came with numbers we didn't recognize and words we recognized too well. "He has friends, you think this ends in court." And I said, "Power doesn't vanish. It regroups, but so does truth if you feed it and protect it." And the DA called and the board murmured about optics, and investors asked if Eleanor was stable enough to lead. And I ironed the one blouse that makes me stand up straighter than I feel. In court, the recording spoke in a way some people never will. The defense tried to turn me into an opportunist, and her into a fragile wife tried to sell exhaustion as a villain and a mansion as an alibi. And when they asked why I risked myself for a woman who dismissed me, I said, "Because silence killed someone I loved, and I won't let it kill someone I can save." And the room shifted a small hinge. People stopped nodding at charm and started listening to content, and the verdict wasn't fireworks. It was a gavel. Guilty on attempted murder, no bail. And he stood up, mean for the first time in public, told us we'd regret it, called me nothing, and I smiled, because nothing with a voice and a recording is not the kind of nothing men like him survive. On the courthouse steps, somebody shoved a mic in our faces and asked how it felt. And Eleanor said, "Alive, clear as a bell," then reached for my hand and I took it, full, knowing the comments would eat it. Solidarity photographs are a test. We passed ours and no life didn't flip to easy. The headlines kept their claws. The whispers kept their teeth. Copper started sleeping with his head on my sneaker when it thundered, and we framed a little printed transcript on the back of the office door, where only we can see it, not to relive it, but to remember what broke the mask. Here's your twist, if you need one. The neat ending is a myth. The real win is smaller and tougher. It's a bolt that still gets oiled, a phone that stays charged on a nightstand. A woman who built an empire learning that pride can unlearn itself. A maid who stopped being invisible in a house designed to make her that way. And both of us learning there's a difference between being loud and being heard. If you made it this far, I want to hear you. Who wears the more dangerous mask in your book, the one who smiles while planning harm, or the one who hides behind status to excuse it? Did Eleanor owe me more than an apology, or is there a kind of debt that can only be paid by changing how you live? Have you ever kept quiet to be polite while something inside you screamed? Drop your thoughts. Argue with me if you need to tell me where you're watching from and what storm you've walked through. And if you want more stories told, the way life actually sounds at 2 a.m., in a house that finally learned how to tell the truth, hit subscribe and join the conversation.